Hello patrons and welcome back to my office. Well, what a few weeks it has been. Last time I spoke to you it was all about Amazon wasting, I've no idea how many hours trying to persuade me to basically go away. So in the end I did. I had to reset all of my accounts. Well, that was a pain, but at least it got things out of the way. And the first thing I did after that was try to focus on writing, working and getting some peace and quiet. So the sniper is still here. I haven't finished the edits, but there are an awful lot of additional comments coming through. Basically it was a very good book as a first book, especially for a book written in the 1990s. In today's market it won't hack it. Very strange market currently. The book I wrote all about Shanghai, which was, I think, a strong crime story, has not been accepted anywhere. And my agent reckons that it's simply a case that nowadays a lot of editors don't want anything that smacks of a cosy crime thriller mystery type book. Which is really sad, because so many of the best crime books are cosy style books. It's what they are. So all the Agatha Christie's, they are defined as cosy pretty much, although she was fairly harsh in some of the things she wrote about. Dorothy Sayers, she too was talking about really quite interesting stuff, and then you start looking at slightly more recent crime books and they don't have to be particularly shocking. I've just finished reviewing a very good crime book by Becky Tope, who's a friend of mine. Really nice little book. It is definitely a cosy, set in the Cotswolds, but Becky has a great understanding of a lot of life because she's spent time as an undertaker's assistant, she's spent time dog sitting in people's houses, house sitting. She's worked in vets. She's a fairly successful published author, so she's had a varied career. But even so, she finds it difficult to get published now. So the market's strange. There's a very popular series on British TV called Doc Martin, which had, I think, 9 or 10 series, but apparently that's being dropped now in favour of more edgy and basically violent stories on TV. Excuse me. So it is very, very odd. But Shanghai hasn't sold. The Sniper wouldn't sell the way it is now. It needs to be reworked. And the way it's got to be reworked, I think, is I need new introduction, which I put up on Patreon at the back end of last month. So have a look at that if you want to have a look and see how I'm changing things. I've got to change fairly extensively the board meeting of effectively the IRA, and then I've got some additional subplots and plot integrations which I'm going to move on to, where the Irish sniper and the British counter sniper are going to get more locked in together. It's all very well having totally realistic stories, but the way the market is now, there needs to be more bite to it. So I'm going to change it slightly. I'm going to make it a little bit more, just going to basically make it a bit more modern. Hopefully that'll work then. However, what else have I been doing? I've also been doing much more of Blackjack, the Bloody Mary Tudor series, number 6. No idea what I'm going to call it, but the book itself is, so far, being great fun to write. I had a bit of a hiatus this week. Last week I managed 5,000 words on the Friday, and that got me over an initial hump. I'm now, very often when I start writing books, the first few pages give me real grief. It'll take me 2, 3, 4 weeks to get the first 5 pages to a stage where I'm happy with them. Then the middle of the book, once I'm happy with the beginning stage, the middle of the book almost writes itself, and it's only when I get to the very end when I'm trying to draw together all of the different threads that lead through the plot so that they all focus in at the end. That takes a lot of time as well. But the middle stages of the book are really quite easy. But this week I've had a lot of troubles because of, I don't know. We've got problems in the field, we've got lots of different interests, and it basically just hasn't worked. Doing things like YouTube, I did an extensive review of a whole bunch of inks on YouTube, and that was great, except it took 2.5, 3 hours to record, and then it took another day to do the edits, and there's just not enough hours in the day, basically. I also then, coming back to Amazon, they decided to invite me rather than just being a contributor. They asked me if I'd be an Amazon influencer, and I thought, that sounds really good. I wonder what that involves. Basically what it involves is they want me to do a load of work to help them sell a bunch of stuff I haven't got, and then they'll theoretically pay me for helping them sell a bunch of stuff. Yeah, right. Well, I'm going to make use of them to an extent. Every time I write a review of a book, I'll have a link from that book to my Amazon influencer account, and then if anybody links through and buys the book, I get a few pennies in return. So it'll only be a few pennies every month because that's the way Amazon works. But at least it means I'm getting something back. I'm having to rewrite, or my admin experts are having to rewrite the whole of my Amazon links from my website, because obviously since I've had to change the account that I'm using because they screwed everything up basically, we're now having to put in a whole bunch of work which I'll have to pay for at some point just to get all of the links for all of my 43 books on sale linked through to the relevant pages on amazon.co.uk and amazon.com, which is a pain. It's all because Amazon mucked up. But there's nothing you can do as an individual author or as a business of even moderate size compared to the biggest corporation in the world, is there? So basically I'll just have to live with it. Thank you, Amazon. But the Black Jack story is going nicely. I'm happy with that. As soon as that's done, I'm then going to have to go back to another book I wrote. It was the second book I wrote, in fact, which was How to Get Yourself a Job When You Find Yourself Unemployed. I think that is going to be quite a useful book for a lot of people, coming up very, very soon. So I'm going to be seeing if I can edit that and put that out on the internet myself, hoping it will help some people who are liable to be looking for jobs in the near future. I started looking into that and trying to remember all the different things that I had. And I was running through all the different jobs that I'd had in my career before starting to be a writer. And I worked out I'd had 13 jobs in 13 years. Now, that doesn't, one job a year for 13 years. That sounds a bit surprising, but when you bear in mind that I was at Wordplex for 4.5 years, I was at Wang for 4.5 years, I was at Bluebird Software for 1 year, so that's 10.5 years. I was at JBA for 1 year, so that's 11.5 years. That's 4 jobs. The other 9 all had to fit into the limited amount of time there was. The best one I had, admittedly, was NBI, which is a strange little company that I think was set up by some people in Colorado who smoked a lot of rather illegal substances, and they decided that IBM did well, ICL did well, NCR did well. They thought, that's what we'll do. We'll call ourselves NBI, nothing but initials. And it was doing really quite well. I was working at Rank Xerox at the time, selling their absolutely awful office automation. I didn't manage to sell a single device because basically I thought they were rubbish and I wasn't happy to sell them to people, which is a bit of a failing when you're a salesman, but even so, it left me feeling much happier as a human being. But I was tempted away to go and work for NBI with the offer of a BMW motor car and all sorts of stuff. And NBI were the kings at office networking systems in those days. They did office automation, so word processing systems, but the main thing was everything was linked together, tying together PCs rather than dedicated word processors such as Wordplex and Wang that used to sell. I thought that sounded really good, and so I agreed. I left, I joined them, And 2 weeks later, those nice dope-smoking people in Colorado had a bit of a brainwave, decided to close down their international operations, made me and everybody else across the rest of the world redundant, and focused on their home market. Which was, after 2 weeks, a shock. In fact, it was very unpleasant because the managing director was a lovely guy called Gary Sampson, I think. The day he heard that he had to make everyone redundant, he committed suicide that night. That's just awful. He was such a lovely bloke. But these things happen. So yes, I'm going to be trying to edit that and seeing if I can get that on sale before too long. And then I've also got other things. The trouble is, when you're self-employed and you're writing, the temptation is to just treat every waking moment as a working moment. It is very, very difficult, I find, to turn off. It's even more difficult when you're writing books because you're creating characters in your head, you're creating scenes, and you're effectively living with those characters. It's very difficult to turn off all of that and remind yourself that you're actually in the 21st century, not the 16th. Which obviously drives my wife potty and my children. But I do have to try to get back to modern day life a bit more regularly. So I'm trying to do more painting, watercolouring. I'm failing abysmally. I haven't managed to do a watercolouring for a month and a half now, I think. I've rediscovered the joys of metal detecting. I've got a metal detector over there. You can possibly just see the bronzish arm going up there. And it's a brilliant pastime, it's brilliant fun. I've been off to see a farmer not far from here who's got 200 odd acres. Bit of a problem metal detecting because it's a lot of scrub and a lot of woodland, but we'll see. I might find something, you never know. My first investigation with him, I found a horseshoe, I found 2 metal hinges, and I found an awful lot of barbed wire. But I hope that I can improve on that slightly. So apart from that, I've covered Amazon, I've covered writing, Amazon, metal detecting. Oh yeah, there is one last thing. Canelo, delightful people that they are, have taken over all of the last Templar series from there to there. So that's the first 13 books. And they've agreed recently that they're going to take over the last books and Templars Acre as well. So they're all reissued, they're available as e-books. Hopefully before too long it'll be possible to buy them as print on demand or as printed books. I certainly hope so, because it makes a big difference as an author if you can get your books on paper in front of readers, because so many readers still prefer paper. But they've done a fantastic job with wonderful covers, and really they are pushing the books and trying to sell them. So I'm looking forward this month to finding out what sort of income I'm going to get for the last 6 months. This is the trouble about writing books, is you're paid twice a year. Yeah, that really sucks. That's not good. But it's the way that the publishing industry has always been, and it's the way that publishers make their money, because they take all of the money coming in and they bank it. They don't have to pay their authors for another 6 months or up to 9 months. It tends to be that publishers will work out from January to the end of June how much the authors sold, and then that money will be paid 3 months later. If you write a book, to give an example, I wrote my first book in 1994. It came out in March 1995, 1 year later. I wrote it in the March. So I wrote it in March 94, came out March 95, was selling from March. So the earliest time I could see a return on my money was the September of 1995, when the first few might have got sold. In fact, I knew it wouldn't be until probably March the next year, because that would have the sales from 1st of July to the end of December that year. So in that case I knew the very earliest I could possibly earn any money was 2 years after I'd written the book. It's really not a sensible way to try to earn a living. Authors are gamblers, or fools. Sadly, that's just the case. Hope that was interesting. Thanks very much again for your patronage, and Do please send me any questions or comments if you got them, because I'm more than happy to answer any issues that you have. And apart from that, thanks very much. And now I'm going to go back to writing and working. Hard life, innit? Take care. Thanks very much for watching. See you soon. Cheers.